Tony Gentilcore here at T-Nation headquarters in Colorado Springs, and I want to go over a little bit about the Landmine press, why we would use it, give you some execution tips, and obviously show you a few variations you can use as well with your training. So what I love about the Landmine press is it's a great variation for people who don't really have the ability to get their arms up overhead because they lack shoulder flexion, or maybe they have a history of shoulder issues and their shoulders just don't feel great with a military press or anything strictly overhead. So with a Landmine, we can get overhead pressing, but in a fake sense, where they're getting the training effect, but they're staying in the safe zone. So I want to discuss some common mistakes that people make with execution. So number one is even how you hold the barbell. I find, this is a tip I got from my buddy Nick Tuminello. Instead of holding the barbell in your wrist like so, in your hand like so, the barbell will have a tendency of rolling the wrist this way as you get a little bit tired. So what I found works well is you put your thumb on the outside of the bar, and that's going to help you, number one, keep that wrist nice and neutral the whole time. So number two, what we want to think about is I prefer people to start in the tall position rather than here, because one thing we want to avoid is that aggressive rolling of the shoulder forward. So we get that, I mean, in my neck of the woods we would call it anterior humeral glide, but we want to avoid that little shoulder roll and really get away of causing any issues in the front side of that shoulder. So what we want to do is we want to start up tall, thumb on the outside of the bar, make a fist with your free hand. So if we're just going to do a standard square stance Landmine press, we're going to start in the end position. So start tall, brace the abs, my glutes are on. I'm making a fist with this free hand, so it's tension. I don't want people to be inactive with this lift. And as they lower the barbell, we want to stop right about here. Me going any lower gets my shoulder to dump forward, and I want to avoid that. So we want to make sure we stop here and we press up like so, maintaining tension the whole time. And you can see this is a great way. I'm still training my shoulders, I'm getting an overhead training effect, but we're staying out of that danger zone where people tend to have problems with their shoulder mobility. Now, we can also go from a standing position and we can go into a half kneeling position. So we can go here if we want to take joints out of the equation. If people have a hard time doing it in a standing position, same thing, start up tall, my thumb is on the outside of the bar, we're making a fist, I'm squeezing this glute, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to stop here. This is the stopping point, and pressing up. So we can do a half kneeling Landmine variation. Now we can also go tall kneeling Landmine variation. And those are the vanilla flavors of the Landmine. If we want to get a little bit more cute, we can do what's called a 2-1 technique. I think this is the Christian Thibodeau specialty, doing the 2-1 technique. So if we want to load it up a little bit more, actually we'll do this standing. We can load it up with some weight, we can press with 2, but then go down with 1. Press with 2, go down with 1. So it's a great way of overloading the lift on the eccentric portion, and it's just a nice way of adding variety to your training. Now all these have been pretty sagittal in nature, forward, backward. So who's to say when we do a Landmine press that we couldn't do it in more of a frontal plane and press in this variation? So again, I have people do, if we want to give them a little training variety, we do Landmine presses in more of the frontal plane to the side. So that will just give you a few variations to consider for the Landmine. There's more athletic variations we can do as well, but most people are going to be good with that. But just consider why you would use it. It's great for people who lack shoulder flexion, can't get their arms overhead. And it's also the execution. So we want to be really on point with making sure we're not rolling that shoulder forward when we do the lift itself.